episode 219 of the Downward Facing Spiritual Spiral podcast. I, of course, am Eddie Cohn. Thanks so much for listening, supporting the show. And boy, you were probably thinking, gosh, where's Eddie? It's been a few weeks since I last released a podcast. And yeah, a few things here before you listen to a great conversation that I had with Polly Humphreys. She's a friend of mine here in LA. She's been on the show a couple times before. And we talk about the latest Bill Cosby documentary that just came out on Showtime, which is fantastic. We also talk about Hacks, a show on HBO. First season I loved. Second season I thought was okay. And then we also talk about violence and drug use in television as well. I think it's a really good chat, so you're in store for that. But before we get there, I spent about a week back east in Maine and Boston and for a vacation, which was fantastic. Always reminded how valuable it is to travel and just get out of your head, get out of your normal routine and try new food, see new places. So that was about a week of my time. And then I kind of had a health scare for a few weeks. And I think I'm in the clear, at least temporarily. And I'm not going to really get into the details of it now, at least. I don't know. Maybe I will in the future. I'm not sure. I was on Joseph Arthur's podcast a couple weeks ago. So if you type in Joseph Arthur TNT Radio in the Google search, you can certainly find the show and listen to it there. I get into it a little bit with him. But I guess a couple points I was thinking. It feels like we live in a culture now where there is a benefit, or people find it beneficial if they reveal intimate details on social media, online, and then they're rewarded or they're applauded for being so quote-unquote brave. And I don't know. I've been struggling with that. When is it worthy to reveal the personal struggles that you're going through? I've been through a lot of personal struggles, physical, mental, and I touch on them a little bit here on my show, but I think my show is more about listening to others and hear other people's stories about how they deal with this strange society of ours. I've just really been reflecting on the usage of the word trauma. It feels like everybody has a trauma now. Everything is traumatic. And if you go through that trauma, then you're a hero, especially if you vocalize it publicly to the world. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case. First of all, I feel like what I went through over the last couple of weeks was pretty traumatic. And I'm still reflecting upon it. And I think it's okay to not talk about it. I mean, I've spoken about it, obviously, with a couple personal close friends and some family. But there is something to be said about being private and not sharing every detail. And I think we often pick and choose details and quote-unquote traumas because it may make us look heroic. It may bring more attention to our life. It may make us seem sympathetic or courageous, or we've gone through something that somebody else hasn't gone through, rather. And we're all dealing with traumas every day, whether it's paying for bills, the violence, the trauma created by the influx of social media and the news stories, health stuff, divorce, violence, mental trauma. It is fucking overwhelming right now, dealing with life. One person's trauma, quote unquote, may not be more traumatic than somebody else's, but maybe somebody sort of has this innate need to share their trauma to get attention, to get some sympathy, maybe to use that trauma to get further in their life. Look, I'm potentially going to start writing a new book where I talk about some of the things that I've been dealing with recently and also as a kid. And a lot of people say that my story is pretty damn courageous and heroic. Everything that I've gone through to become the person I am is quote unquote inspiring. And maybe it is. I'm not sure. I can't determine what about my life is inspiring. I just want to keep getting better at my craft, at communicating, at learning, expanding upon my curiosity, speaking to more guests. And maybe if I spent more time trying to market myself as an inspirational leader, as somebody who's overcome trauma, childhood trauma, maybe I would be touring the world and maybe I'd be a public speaker. I certainly have thought about that. I think I'm a pretty good, articulate speaker. I think I have something to say. But I've never been very good about promoting myself. Even the podcast, I enjoy more listening to others than talking about myself. So it's just something that I've been sort of reflecting upon, thinking about, and sort of the way that we are sharing our stories. And one other point here that I want to share before you listen to my chat with Polly. So in my discussion with Polly, I used to theorize that entertainment was better than it used to be now. The quality of TV and movies used to be better than it is now. But then I've sort of changed my tune after seeing some shows like Severance. And maybe the quality of content now is actually just as good, if not better. But because we're all sort of in our own individual algorithmic paths, we don't have that sort of collective, the community going on where we're all talking about it, we're all watching it at the same time. But then I watched Fatal Attraction last night, and I haven't seen it for 10, 15 years. And as I was watching it and finished it, I realized, something? I'm correct. We don't see movies like that anymore. We will never see a movie like that, possibly again. Adrian Lyne is the director. And the attention to nuance and subtlety, the visuals, that last scene that happens in the bathroom, the use of steam, the claustrophobia created in that small space, the sound of the water. Your homework for this week is to watch Fatal Attraction. The water bubbling over, Michael Douglas being downstairs, he doesn't hear anything because the tea kettle is blaring. And Glenn Close and her hysteria with the knife in hand, cutting herself, the red blood, in contrast to the white walls of the bathroom. I am telling you right now, they don't make them like that anymore. And I'm going to talk about this further over the next probably couple months. There's something about how television is so much more popular now than movies. And I don't know why. I'm trying to figure that out. Because television shows, there's 10 episodes and a movie is 2 hours. And I don't think people have the patience like they used to, but yet we are consuming more television, which will be sent to us in a 10-episode block as opposed to a movie that's just one episode or one block of entertainment that's 2 hours. So clearly there is a phenomenon happening now where people are more interested in TV than movies. But the quality, it's not what, I feel like there's this subtle level of nuance, subtlety, attention to detail, sounds. It's almost like movies, they were restricted because you couldn't rely on technology or effects as much. You had to make sure that every scene counted. And I'm telling you, when you watch Fatal Attraction, every scene counts. every scene is like a photograph brought to life. The writing, the drama, the way it captivates you emotionally, and you cannot watch Fatal Attraction while doing anything else. And I think now with the way that TV is made, and they know that people are so distracted and doing like 4 things at once while they watch TV, TV and movies don't have that attention to detail that they used to have. And I guess I really firmly believe that after rewatching Fatal Attraction last night. So your homework for this week, watch Fatal Attraction. And tell me what you think. Wow. I've seen that movie before. It's been years, but dang, I was spellbound. So we got a great show today. For the rest of this episode, you'll listen to a chat that I had with Polly Humphreys. You know where to find me on social at Eddie Cohn or the Spiritual Spiral Podcast. Please, if you enjoy the show, write a review on iTunes. That would be incredibly helpful. Share the show with your friends. I have a couple more guests lined up. Those episodes should drop in the next few weeks. I'm also writing a lot of new music. I'm sort of in the midst of pre-producing a new album. So I've got about 7-8 new songs I'm working on. I would love to start recording a new record. It feels like that's kind of what I'm doing, but we'll see. If all goes to plan, I'll start putting some drums down. I'll bring Jake Reed in, and we'll start doing some drums, and hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have some songs that are not necessarily finished, but more evolved and developed, and hopefully I can release some of this next year. So, Polly, thanks again for taking the time to be part of the show again. And thanks as always to you for listening, supporting, and being a part of the Downward Facing Spiritual Spiral podcast. We'll divide this into 3 parts.
Okay.
We'll see how we get to part 3.
Sorry, a kitty just walked in.
Oh,
Leo.
Hey, Leo. Part 1, I know you haven't watched the documentary yet, but so I finished the Bill Cosby documentary.
Oh, okay.
And so I go to my alkaline water place today, and
which is, by the way, the most LA statement ever. Go ahead.
I know, right? So I pick up my water, and he's really into sports, and we normally talk about the Lakers, but the Lakers the season isn't happening right now.
Right.
So he said something. He asked me, "So have you seen any shows or anything? You're watching anything?" And I go, "Actually, I just watched the. You get Showtime. I just watched the Bill Cosby documentary. We have to talk about Bill Cosby." And his response, and look, he's not ignorant, but I think we've sort of touched on this a bit in the past. But his response was, "Oh my gosh, did you believe all these people going after him, all these women and what they're saying about him?" And I didn't want to get too in the weeds with him, but I just said something like, watch the documentary. There were quite a few women that have a story that's pretty similar, and I don't want to say too much, but just watch it. And again, I didn't want to be judgmental, but it did really make me think about our culture's skewed perception of O.J. Simpson. Because O.J. Simpson was able to, I had these flashbacks because he was able to score touchdowns, and people loved him as an athlete. And then, look, I couldn't believe Bill Cosby and the accusations and how much of a pig this guy is. I remembered his stand-up, and of course I grew up on that show. But it's I guess there's 2 parts. What is it with these people, and then are we all acting in a particular way, but they're just like really good at it, and we believe what they're portraying on screen?
People don't want to knock them down. Bill Cosby, Woody Allen, you
Yeah.
know, OJ Simpson, Harvey Weinstein, like they're horrible people, but they did all these things that made people, a huge portion of the population, admire them, trust them. And in the case of of Bill Cosby or of Woody Allen, you identified with them as characters. Specifically in Cosby's case, he was in your living room every week on that show. And we talked about this a little bit the other day. He was, he was the black guy that all the white people could accept.
Yeah.
And he was the black guy that for black people, was quote unquote aspirational.
Yeah.
How could Dr. Huxtable possibly do those things? And that's the thing. I think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is a real reach, but I think the people that have a problem with it have a problem with where they got to about Dr. Huxtable.
Yeah. Yeah.
The best TV black dad they ever knew.
I just wonder, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine about Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson the other day, and I wonder if there's just a certain personality trait or grace or like, again, I would broadly just say acting, but in Tucker and Don Lemon's case, I know they're all reading scripts. But whether you're right or left, they are both excellent at their jobs. They are great at emoting or creating emotion in the listener or the viewer. And I guess Bill Cosby and his family, and I guess the people that are successful on Instagram and social media, it's weird. It's almost like the people who are able to sort of like portray something are I guess are like really successful in this weird sort of way now.
Yeah, but I think broadcasters are a different. Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon write their own scripts, first of all, and secondly are speaking about issues directly. Cosby was portraying he was playing a role.
Yeah.
It was a script that was written for him about this family, but he did it incredibly well. And, as any successful TV show will do, Archie Bunker became a beloved character.
Yeah.
For being, kind of the opposite. But when people fall in love with something that then becomes, I spent my childhood watching this.
Yeah.
How could he possibly have done these things? It's more, I think, the not wanting to accept that he did it is more about like having your legend fucked with.
Ruins, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny listening, I don't want to say too much, but listening to the women that were sharing their stories about going to his home and getting into these situations, and he's giving them drinks and pills, but before all of that, they're all lionizing him, and there is this sort of I don't know what it is. I mean, look, I feel this way about Bono and Tom York and Eddie Vedder. If I saw Eddie Vedder walking down the street, I'm sure I would be just in awe. And if he's asking me to have a beer, I wouldn't believe it.
And then if he was like, Eddie, take this pill.
But that's the thing. But that's the thing. It's sort of like I understand. Well, that question sort of got me off track. But I guess my point is that they were all similarly just in awe and looking up to this person as if they're a
Mhm.
superhero. And I,
Because he
but
was.
I think the learning lesson, and I think that people have a hard time with this, but maybe it's being revealed more often now. But I've had a hard time. I've had trust issues for my life because I think deep down, I I I know that human beings can have these very dark places, and it's hard to explain. I think that was the powerful message of that show was humanity and is it possible that Bill Cosby can just be this endearing, amazing actor, but then also be just scum? And I guess he
Uh,
can. Obviously, he
the
can.
answer is yes.
Yeah.
But at that time also, I mean, besides what he was doing as an actor, he was a philanthropist,
Yes.
and still is, I think.
Apparently, yeah. Gave millions
He
of dollars to universities.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. But continue. Yes.
And was a guy who presented himself as someone who could be really helpful to these women in their careers. That's with many of them, that's how it started. It wasn't um it wasn't like come have a drink with me, wink wink. It was like, let's talk about your future. I you're interesting. I kind of admire you. Let's see what I can do for you.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly enticing. And why wouldn't you trust him? He's Bill Cosby. It isn't, again, we sort of have talked about this before.
Well,
Uh,
but here's the point, and this piggybacks
yeah,
on what you're about to say or what you've been saying. I think, though, it's very important for us culturally, and for whatever reason, I don't want to say it's a skill, but we have to distinguish between whatever you see on screen, whether it's social media, your phone, or in movies or TV, as emotionally caught up as you may get in whatever you're seeing, that has nothing to do with who that person really is.
correct. However, the person, no one knew this, I mean, or actually people did know it, but they didn't know it in its gruesome detail.
Hmm.
He was a guy who had a way with the ladies,
Yeah, yeah,
as far as everyone was concerned. And that's he's on the heels of Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, when everybody, they were all guys that had a way with the ladies. Like
yeah,
it was kind of cool to be that guy,
yeah,
to have a drink and maybe be like, and again, we've sort of talked about this. It was also a time when it's like, this little pill will relax you. You're so nervous. Take a pill.
right.
And saying no to that would make you uncool.
Yeah,
So he was playing on his strengths
yeah,
because he is a guy who would put you at ease. He is a guy who would make you feel important. That's one of the reasons I think, when actors, um, often actors use who they are to create a really strong and believable character.
yeah,
And in Cosby's case, I think that was true of the Dr. Huxtable character. I can't remember his first name. That's why I keep saying Dr. It's like,
yeah. Cliff,
Dr.
Cliff.
Huxtable, Cliff.
Yeah,
Yeah. But anyway, he was the like Uber Cosby.
yeah,
It was all the best qualities of Bill Cosby in the real world. It was the ideal Bill Cosby. It just left out the perverse
the
creep.
rape, the rapey,
Yeah,
the rapey
the
part.
rapey part. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's a
But so a young actress who cannot believe her luck when Bill Cosby says, "I think we should talk,
yeah,
and I think you can go places." You know, of course you're going to say yes.
yeah,
And um separating someone who is, it's not like he was playing, kind of a sexy bad guy. He was playing everybody's dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so I get why he was able to get away with it, why it was, why it could happen so many times.
Well, and here's my last point, though, in this area, though, that's something that we've talked about that really bothers me. And there's a powerful moment in this particular documentary where the comedian who's producing and directing the documentary, I forget his name, but he's asking the producer question about, because they just tell the story about one particular model who is playing a police officer on the show, and she's given a dressing room. And they're all like, and she's even thinking, I have like 3 lines. Why am I given a dressing room? And it's because Bill Cosby obviously wanted to go to her dressing room. And so the director is asking the producer, did you ever see anything? Was anything unusual going on? And just in that moment, he's saying, he's playing naive. He's answering like, no, I didn't find that unusual, or I didn't see anything. And it really pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because Polly, I know, people there knew what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
And it's either they don't want to lose their job, or they don't want to, ruffle the feathers or piss somebody off. There's too much on the line. And what's even more disturbing, or just as disturbing, is when all these accusations are going on and the media's finding out about it, Bill Cosby it was in the works that he was going to get another show on NBC in the last like 5-6 years, and eventually they finally drop it. But there are people,
Wow.
you'll find out in the documentary. It's powerful. It pisses me off because as much as Bill Cosby is at the top of this fucking train and he's the conductor, there are people involved that know what's going on and they're keeping their mouth shut. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I don't know, I don't have a point, but it just, that is.
Well, but that's true of all predators in high places.
Yeah.
They all have.
Because even the Matt Lauers, the Weinsteins,
Absolutely.
I mean, people knew what the hell was going on. And,
Absolutely.
And that's the power of money or, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I'm sorry, but these headphones slide off my head there.
Right.
It's also, the sadness of that is all these people who are enablers do want to keep their job.
Right.
That's what they want. They don't want to get fired. They don't want to be, never work again. It takes a very brave person in that situation to come to say something. Not only brave, but convinced. You know what I mean? Like, and probably everyone suspected, sort of knew, but maybe, if you're like, I think something bad is going on, but I'm not 100% sure, and nobody else is saying anything, and you really need the job.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying all of this because I think that's how this kind of stuff has gone on in perpetuity.
Yeah.
If you work for the king and the king is doing something that you think is not good, but he's the king and you'll get kicked out of the kingdom, you might not look very hard for the real truth.
Yeah.
It's not a great quality, but I think people do it all the time. Frankly, the stuff that's been going on, and we'll just go here for 1 second, but the stuff that went on in the January 6th hearings, when now all these people are like, and then he did this. And it's like, you were there and you knew it at the time. Now you're talking about it. Why didn't you do something then?
information is moving so fast now, and we're all so distracted and sort of like down our own paths, wherever the algorithms are going to take us today. We're all going down our own path. So it's almost like people can get away with a lot more nowadays, because it's like, in order to get caught, it feels like, really understand what's going on, you need people to not be distracted, and we need your attention for like a week to really read and understand what the fuck is going on. And because I really think a lot about my process of learning as a kid and understanding something, I needed to like reread it over and over again, and not be distracted and not have the television on. And now it's sort of like, no wonder people are able to do so many nefarious things, because it's sort of like, and I don't even know if they're thinking directly that, I can get away with stuff because people are so distracted, but I do think it's easier now for things to sort of go down that nasty place, because people just are just doing their own thing.
And quickly forget.
Yes.
And however, the flip side of that is that, when you do the nefarious thing that you're going to do, somebody's got a record of it now, always.
Right.
They've either got like, I found all your texts, or somebody recorded it or whatever. But yes, it's certainly a different ball game.
You seem, I remember our last podcast, you definitely dropped the F-bomb a few times. You seem more proper and polite today.
I said, I think I've F-bombed. Well, I am happy to fucking say whatever you want me to it.
Good. So
I think this one, like, so far, the Cosby conversation doesn't get me as worked up as other things do.
Okay, got it. Well, so Hacks.
Oh, here we fucking go. Now we're talking.
Well, here's something that I want to talk to you about. So I loved the first season.
Okay.
And Jen Statsky, who's one of the creators of the show, wrote or was a co-writer of all the scripts in that season.
Okay.
Season 2, if it weren't for the last episode, I would have said, boy, is this just a mess. Like, it, to me, just meandered and the story on the yacht. I understand, like, they needed to do all of this to get to the end episode where she's filming her own episode or her own stand-up routine.
Right.
Jen was a co-writer on that last episode, and it just, that last episode reminded me of like why I loved the first season so much. And it's the relationship between, I forget the two leads' names, but their relationship. And then the thing is that the whole season, you did not have that guy who, I forget his name, but he was like the head of the casino where she used to work at.
Right.
He was gone the whole season except the last episode. You needed that sort of, you needed those dynamics, and it just sort of, and you also needed this, the dynamic of Vegas. I just feel like the season 2 was missing a lot of elements that were thankfully brought back on that last episode of season 2.
Yeah, really.
I don't know. I think you may have just liked it all across the board, but
I do think season 1 is better, but I didn't hate season 2. I liked a lot about season 2. The two of them are just so good together that, there's that. But also I loved the sort of journey of Jean Smart's character trying to find her way through, like when she was on the big lesbian boat ship.
yeah.
And, suddenly just made this assumption that she could be whoever she wanted to be. They were like, "You're a woman," and she was like, "Yes, I am, and I'm an asshole too."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh yeah, you are an asshole." I don't know. I thought that was hilarious. I also,
Yeah.
like, I love the guy who is their manager and Kayla.
Oh, he's
I love
funny.
that side story, and Kayla is hilarious too. I mean, she's she's sort of the most over the top character in the whole
Yes.
thing, but they did a really good job of making her three-dimensional. You know,
Yeah.
she is over the top, but that girl exists. She's
Yeah.
not, you know. So for me, season two, again, I agree. Season one was amazing, and it could have ended kind of there.
Yeah.
But since they kept it going, and since they wanted to get to, the Jean Smart character getting to the real truth of who she was, um, they had to spread a wider net, I guess.
Well, it's interesting. I'm speaking of this through experience, but my observations of the music industry and even look, I love great art, much like you do, but I believe I can distinguish art that is created from the muse as opposed to art that is created because, oh, this thing that you made, the first album, the first season is so good, we need another one. And to me, season 2 of Hacks, and look, the last 3 seasons of Seinfeld, it's very, to my eyes, and I'm not saying this with any sort of, I'm not proud of it or modesty, but I feel like I can tell when something is made because producers and money's involved and, hey, what you made was so great, we need another one. And that's how season 2 felt to me.
See, okay, and you're right. I see that all the time. But I didn't feel that in
Okay.
season 2 entirely. I wanted to know what was going to happen with these two, and the strength of the performances. Like you said that you thought that Las Vegas was a character, which is great. It was a great way to put it because it really was. And so there was an added spice
Yeah.
in that first season. So again, in season 2, they're on the road. They
Right.
don't have that character. So the show relies more on the relationships that these people have with one another. And for me, they stood up. They were good enough. I ugh, oh my God, I can't. Hannah Einbinder, I think is her name.
Yes, good memory.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Uh, her whole thing, her father's ashes in the tennis ball thing, and her experience on the lesbian cruise, were, I think, funny and interesting.
I think that's
And
the thing. All of her stuff, to me, I didn't care. But what's the main character's name? Jean Smart?
Jean Smart, yes,
Whenever she's involved in her life,
yeah,
then to me it seems interesting. But when she was sort of like on her own trying to find herself or whatever, she's subletting her place out to somebody who then wants to hook up with her. Like all that stuff to me was just like I don't care. But
right.
it felt like a lot of filler.
Well,
But
I will just say this: I think you're just penning a little love letter to Jean Smart because she is
look,
such a
you're
fucking
right.
powerhouse.
She blew me away.
She's unbelievable. So yes, any show that where you can ask for more Jean Smart, you're allowed to ask for more Jean Smart.
Well, and here's the question that I want to ask, and then there's another question I want to ask about the show too. So I've had this hypothesis or theory that the beginning of my podcast where I felt because of tech and social media and our attention spans, and because producers it's because there's so much. It's now about quantity. It's about, okay, no more 22 episodes, only 6, only 5, 8 at the most. So I've had this theory that quality is down because of what's happened culturally, and and technology is one. Like they are thinking more about attention span, society, tech, and so. But then I feel like maybe my theory has been ripped to shreds thanks to first season of Hacks, I'll say, Severance. There was another show that just blew me away that came out. Well, the one with Amy Schumer I thought was fantastic, the comedy. So my point here is that maybe shows are actually better than ever right now, but there's just so many that part of what made, I'll say, The Cosby Show or Family Ties or Cheers, part of what made the greatness of those shows stand out is we'd go to work the next day or go to school the next day or wherever, and you'd all talk about it with your friends and you'd sort of like live the experience together, and now we're sort of like
in real time.
in real time.
That's the difference.
Yes.
And because I've never, that we've always differed about the quality versus quantity thing. I don't think quantity negates quality, but there is a difference, and we've talked about this before. There's a difference in the way that things are written because of binging. I like that HBO does it, and I think others do, where you have to wait for the episode.
Yes.
I think Apple TV does it.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. Someone recently, and it was like, oh yeah, someone said something that's missing from watching streaming is, being in the kitchen and hearing like, it's coming back on, back on, and having to run back into, and it's like, yeah, there is that. It almost makes it more intense. I guess, that it happens while it happens. And then we had, whatever VCRs and stuff like that. So you could see things later. But I do think that there's a lot of really quality stuff. I think there has been for a while. The problem with quantity is that you have to look for it.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily going to find it.
Yeah, but I think, more to your earlier point about this quantity, I brought it up a little bit. I tell you to watch Severance,
right?
But I had already watched it, and you're sort of like going at your pace. Everybody's sort of like, John down the street might be on episode 8.
Right.
And even if we all collectively decide to watch Severance, you're watching it at your pace. I'm watching it at my pace. There is this strange disconnection happening. Yeah.
The phrase "no spoilers." It didn't exist because we all watched it on the same night.
Yeah.
So, it would, like, if someone hadn't seen it, too bad, So it does alter the way that the conversations, I guess it changes the social aspect.
Yes.
Of consuming content. I don't know if it's all negative. I think there are positives too.
I think the overwhelming quantity and access is truly remarkable. And to have unlimited access. I've been watching a lot of Pearl Jam videos on YouTube, like concert videos,
wow,
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I do sort of reflect back upon, and my last guest, just the grunge scene of the '90s or the hip hop scene of the '90s in New York and LA music scenes. I think outside of Cardi B, and Kanye West, or not Kanye, Drake. How does and Billie Eilish? It's sort of like, I don't know. How does something take over a culture? I'm even trying to think of like a show. I guess Top Gun did for a little bit, but I don't know. It's sort of like those days of when music or a show like Hill Street Blues or Cheers, it's a part of the cultural community.
Oh my God. What are you talking about, Eddie?
Does that happen now anymore?
Yeah.
Give me an example.
Beyonce's album just dropped and he's killed the world.
I'm like, let's Beyonce and her Beehive, they have they're like this growing living entity, and Beyonce's been around for a while now. I
Yeah.
guess can something new come out? Like, is anything new coming out that sort of takes over the culture? I mean, I know that Beyonce had a new album come out, and we're all excited about that. But I don't know. I just feel like it's really hard for something to not only like break through, but sort of engulf our society with create a creative entity.
I think if we're talking about music, that probably happens more than you know because you're of a certain age.
Yeah, I've wondered that too.
I think it's happening more on social media. I
Okay.
think a lot of a lot of artists are sort of debuting their stuff on social media,
Yeah.
and all the kiddos are as hooked up to it as we ever were.
Look, I love the new Harry Styles record.
So do I.
I think it's
He's brilliant.
amazing. But go back to like TV shows, and I don't know. Is a TV show able to take over a culture like it used to?
Yes. I mean, there was, and again, just thinking about, Euphoria was a giant, and by the way, which I have not seen yet.
Well, wait, you didn't see the first season of Euphoria?
No, I haven't
Okay,
seen
because
any.
that's fantastic. I haven't seen the second season
Right.
yet. Okay.
But
Yeah, okay.
it was, everyone was talking about it everywhere, you
Okay.
know? Game of Thrones did it. When
Yeah.
Game of Thrones was on. It feels different because the medium?
Mediums.
Media are different,
Yeah.
because they're on these giant platforms. But it used to be that like ABC, NBC, and CBS were the giants,
Yeah.
you know?
There's just so much now. I mean, God, like we're doing all these
I-
studies. It's
yeah.
like Epics and Stars and
Oh my God.
BET Plus and
Oh my God.
Paramount
And-
Plus, and I just
And even YouTube,
Yeah.
it's a player now.
so I guess my last question. I don't know if you'll remember in season 1, but what's the younger woman's name?
Hannah Einbinder?
Hannah Einbinder meets this guy, and they go out and
Eh.
casually do blow.
Yeah.
And I guess Molly is the drug that's in now. They're
Yeah.
doing Molly, and she talks about Molly later.
Yeah.
And the casualness in which they just do cocaine and do some Molly and just having a good time, and now he ends up dying.
Oh yeah, there's that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's this certain casualness to drug use and violence in TV and movies that I'm really feeling sensitive to right now. Like I look at the way our culture is, and this supposed fentanyl crisis happening, and I don't mean supposed in a light-hearted way.
Yeah.
I just because I don't see it in my periphery, but if the statistics are right and the news stories are right, it's there, and this onslaught of violence happening, and I Bill Maher brought up like statistics where we can't say it's one thing. We can't say it's depression, bad parents, but and it's only violence on film or in television. But boy, that the way that they just did drugs and he jumps off of a building and dies, but then everybody just sort of moves on. We don't see the kid's funeral. We don't like that's fucking awful that he does drugs. He's like a con artist and he dies. And I mean that there's really no look. We don't have time. Sorry that it's taking me a while to get to my point. We don't have time to go to that kid's funeral. Like that's not part of the story. The story are those two women. But there's such a I just was blown away at how casual the drug use is, and you bring up Euphoria, and I don't know. It really bothered me. It really bothered me.
Were you ever a casual drug user?
No.
I was. I mean, that's like I used to do blow and do ecstasy, which is what Molly is.
But did you
Uh,
feel like it's as I guess my question is, did you feel like it's as casual and no big deal as it's being portrayed in TV and movies? Because people that I speak to say that it's fucking awful doing blow, and they had some people that actually came close to dying, and they're like, never touching that shit again.
yeah.
And there's a certain level of casualness that even and even with gun usage in television and movies that it just I don't know if it really represents
Yeah,
our
the gun issue thing is another thing.
okay.
But I think realistically, this is a generational thing. Like my two of my very best friends are like 10 years younger than I am.
Hmm.
And years ago when I don't even remember how it came up, they were like, "Oh my God, you used to do cocaine all the time? You did blow?" And I was like, "Yeah, everybody did."
Yeah.
And ecstasy and all kinds of shit ensued. That's what you did.
Yeah.
And it was fun and it was crazy. And there were plenty of times when you were like, whoops, that shouldn't have happened. But, you know, uh, but to these two friends, it was like, "Oh my God, I would never do that.
Yeah.
I can't believe you did that." And I was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" So I think and now it's back.
Yeah.
It's back. It's back the way it was when I was young. You know,
Yeah.
like
Like culturally.
yes,
Yes, I feel that
yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Fentanyl's something else. Fentanyl is fucking scary as
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
I told you, like, there's a kid living next door to my mom who was a fentanyl addict and has been indicted in a murder.
Oh God.
Yeah, because in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
because all these kids that live in this super rural area have nothing to do, so they're all doing fentanyl. He was there when this murder happened, and he's been indicted in it. And he also is almost 30 years old, living with his parents, and keeps relapsing.
So you don't think TV, film, I know, maybe drugs and violence are different, but do you think that it seeps into our culture and creates some
I think the culture seeps into TV and film.
interesting? Okay.
Yeah, you
So you
know,
think that these creators of television and movies are just mirroring what they see?
yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, especially a show that's based in Vegas. Oh
Hmm.
my God.
Yeah.
People go to Vegas to do drugs
Yes.
and, have a great time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it would have been almost unreal to leave that kind of encounter out of a show about Vegas, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Guns, different. About guns, I just think the fact that almost every show on television at some point, at least, once a month in their storyline, someone has a gun and is shooting people.
Right.
I think that should be something that's really thought about.
Here, I guess I'll circle in one thing. I guess my point that I've often thought about though, when somebody dies, like people are just killed and the story just moves on. You know,
Right.
and I do wonder, and like even that kid who did drugs and killed himself,
Right.
the story moves on. And the reality
But
is, like, if somebody in my periphery is dying from a gunshot wound or drugs, my life is changed forever. And I'm
yeah,
emotionally, potentially going through some serious shit emotionally for maybe 1 to 5, 10 years. And you never see that unless it's, that
part of the plot.
yeah, that brilliant movie, like God, it was with Steve Carell. It was based on a Nick Schiff novel where both the father or the son is addicted to drugs, and it's fucking brilliant. It's with Steve Carell.
I remember I did not see
God,
it.
I
I
read the
remember hearing
books.
about
I
it.
remember it's the dad wrote a book and the son actually wrote a book. So obviously that was part of the story and you know you're for 2 hours you're feeling it. But so I guess that's sort of I'm answering my own question because I guess if it's not part of the story, you know, it just moves on.
Well,
But
the thing is, though, it's not if you say the story or you say your story. You know, it. And again, I go back to the setting. Like I, in my life, have known of people that I spent time with who died, who overdosed. And it you know it's shocking, and you do spend a little bit of time on it, but I did move on. You know, also, especially if they were people who I knew were huge, because one guy that I'm thinking of in particular was an insane party animal. He was doing blow every night,
yeah,
you know, and staying out all night and drinking all night. And so it was no surprise that that happened. And it's sad. And then you go on with your life.
right.
That's, you know, and that Vegas setting, you know, this is, she's in the land of, she picked up a guy in Vegas
Right.
where that kind of shit happens,
Yeah.
you know? I just think, I think, I think it's very sweet that you feel that way. That's a very tender-hearted um, point of view to have because, and she, you know, it's not like she's completely unaffected by it. She is affected by it, but
Yeah.
it's not a major game changer. Well, it kind of is. It does change her, but it's not. We don't. The story doesn't become about that guy because it isn't the story about that guy. The story is the story of her and Jean Smart, and how, and this is something that happens that affects their relationship.
Right. Yeah, I've just yeah, I don't know. I've been really I think a lot about and I don't know if our culture is getting worse because of the fast-paced nature of tech and the news media and is or is culture, I guess my last point and then I'll let you go, is culture always sort of been just a mess and we're doing the best that we can, like I went to the pool today. I
Yeah.
swear to God, on fucking Pico Boulevard, I'm driving the speed limit and some kid zips. I missed him by 10 feet. Zips
Oh,
down the fucking crosswalk, but doesn't push the button, nothing. Like one of those little mini bikes,
yes.
electric. He's probably like 8 years old. He just zips right through. He doesn't look to his right to even see a car's coming. I swear to God, I slam on the fucking brakes and just miss hitting him.
Oh my
My
God.
life could have been ruined and changed forever. Thank
Yeah.
God I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
And it's like, is life just this, you know, we've got all these people on television now just talking about how fucked up the world is, and is it always been this way, and there's just more people that are talking about it, or is it getting better or worse? I mean, I just don't know.
Ooh, that's a giant question, Annie,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's huge. I mean, and I don't know, but I do think um, when a couple of minutes ago when you were just talking about like people die and you move on,
yeah,
I suddenly thought about like I don't know. This is a very you know big one, but in all of Shakespeare's plays, like people get killed all over the place,
yeah,
and people just go on.
yeah.
You know, I think, and I had one of those nights a couple of nights ago. When I was like the whole, you know, Europe being so hot that people are dying, and so I had a night of like, oh my God, global warming. It's not a joke. This is the worst time ever. But people have said that about a lot of other times.
Yeah.
Imagine, being in, oh my God, being in Europe during the Holocaust.
Oh, yeah.
That was definitely the worst. How could anything be worse than that? Or being in Africa, during one of the many hunger crises that have happened there. If you're living someplace where there is no food and there is no water, which has already happened, or being in medieval Europe during the plague.
Yeah.
Shit.
No, believe me.
That would have sucked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just think that, but I think what is happening now is that everything is changing so quickly, and we are bombarded with so much information that it feels like there's never been anything like this before, and there hasn't.
Right.
But before this, there was something else that was the thing that nothing had ever been like before. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah.
I don't know. But then amongst all of that shit, there are these beautiful pictures of outer space that have been showing up recently that are mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of those?
No. I've been watching a lot of cat and animal videos lately. That's sort of been my go-to. But but send me the space photos.
I'll send you. They're, it's not. They are. I always am like, it's the Hubble telescope, but it's not. It's NASA is getting these pictures from somewhere of nebula and solar systems that are mind-blowingly beautiful.
Wow.
And so, in all the chaos and all the shit, there's that as well.
Yeah. Well, Polly,
Eddie,
this was wonderful. We didn't get to Stranger Things, but I think this is we'll maybe it just.
We may have to do another one about Stranger Things just for you to interview me as if like a fangirl.
Okay. Yeah. But this was good though. We covered a lot, and I feel like I like to keep them under an hour. So we're
oh, definitely.
Yeah, people are like, you're not Joe Rogan, so you can't do 4-hour podcasts.
No one needs that, Eddie.
Yeah.
No one needs it.
I don't even think Joe Rogan should be doing 3.5-hour podcasts.
Please, I don't think Joe Rogan should be doing anything, but that's another conversation. All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Great to see you. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.